You're watching the Biography channel.
Keys, cell phone, pager. You want to tell me what we got over here? Come sit down here. You can grab your keys and get on your way.
Hello there.
He was one of the finest actors of the 20th century.
What have I done?
His ability to create unforgettable characters made him, too, unforgettable.
He loved the idea of playing different parts. He would sometimes disappear into characters, and that was what he liked.
He brought depth and grace to all his films, from epic dramas to hysterically funny comedies.
I loved Alec Guinness. I thought he was a wonderful comedian.
I'll get you for this.
But behind the many masks, Alec Guinness was a complex man whose troubled childhood had left him emotionally scarred.
You got the sense that there was just raging waters underneath the calm of his face.
There's that essential loneliness about him. He was essentially isolated and essentially alone.
Even though he had all his emotions and feelings and things that everybody else has and everything, he was basically a gentleman and one of the great actors of the 20th century.
In the early years of the 20th century, London was the bustling modern capital of a great empire. It was also, however, still in the grip of the rigid class and moral strictures of the Victorian era. On the 2nd of April 1914, Agnes de Cuff gave birth to an illegitimate child she named Alec Guinness de Cuff in a seedy street in Marylebone. His first years were desperate, as his mother dragged him from one boarding house to another to avoid angry creditors. She drank too much, often leaving Alec on his own when she went out to the pub. She also refused to tell him who his father was, or even say where the name Guinness came from.
His mother was horrible, and she could have told him who his father was, but wouldn't, and enjoyed keeping it from him. So there was a savage cruelty in the woman that I think scarred him deeply.
As a child, Alec was terrified that being illegitimate would make him an outcast.
I think he was just always nervous all his life that somehow he'd be found out for the urchin he felt basically he was. He never got over being a bastard.
Alec eventually began to suspect that his father was an elderly married Scottish banker called Andrew Geddes, because he sometimes visited Agnes and gave her money.
Alec had a vague idea, because he kept meeting this person that he was told to call uncle, but in fact he was always convinced right from early on that this was his father.
In their brief encounters, Alec caught a glimpse of the world of comfort and respectability, and he longed to be part of it. As soon as Alec was old enough, Geddes arranged for him to go to Pembroke Lodge, a good boarding school. The boy's shyness and insecurity left him wide open to bullying, but he found a way to handle his tormentors and also cope with his own feelings of inadequacy.
He found that he could overcome bullying and so on by being interesting and telling people stories, telling the other kids stories. And so this was, I think, you know, the actor in embryo.
At one of his many makeshift homes, a neighbor saw sparks of talent in Alec and took him to variety shows. He was entranced by this world of make-believe and began to see performing as a way to escape the humiliations of real life. At Roborough, his next school, a powerful performance as the urgent messenger in Macbeth gained praise and rekindled his passion for acting.
He understood immediately that what is on the stage is not you. I mean, this is the best disguise.
I think that was his way of escaping. His interest was totally entering a different person. He never wanted to be Alec.
By 1932, at 18, he'd given up his mother's name and was simply Alec Guinness. He was living on his own and working as a poorly paid apprentice copywriter for a London advertising agency. He still harbored secret hopes of the theatre. He spent all his spare cash in the cheap seats, watching avidly the performances of the three most exciting young actors on the London stage. Ralph Richardson, Laurence Olivier, and John Gielgud. Alec was determined to join them somehow. In the end, he took his courage in both hands and wrote to Gielgud for advice.
We wouldn't expect, the big stage star to take an interest in a sort of young whippersnapper who just sort of turns up in your dressing room, muttering and mumbling and stuttering. But Gielgud actually facilitated things in certain ways.
Impressed with his persistence, Gielgud recommended that Alec study under the actress Martita Hunt. A year later, Gielgud himself offered Guinness the small part of the courtier Osric in his production of Hamlet. The play opened at the New Theatre in St. Martin's Lane in November 1934. For 155 performances, the starving but determined novice could study the master at work.
I think the influence of Gielgud on his life was profound. On stage, Gielgud could make the back of your neck come out in him by this extraordinary disciplined voice and concentration. And Alec learned that.
It wasn't only technique that Alec learned from his mentor. Gielgud's benign guidance gave his whole lifestyle, disfigured by the tribulations of his background, a complete makeover.
He emerged as this wonderful, fastidious gentleman and a man of great taste and culture.
He learned the correct things to do. He learned from Sir John. He learned how he was supposed to behave. Sir John really did help him, made him feel wanted in the theatre.
In July 1935, Guinness was cast as the wolf in Gielgud's production of the biblical drama Noah by the French writer André Aubé. During rehearsals, he found himself charmed by one of the cast, Marilla Salomon.
She was an absolutely natural saint. Without in any way being boring, she was funny, she was delightful, you wanted to be in her company, but you knew she was a very, very good woman.
Alec and Marilla both adored the theatre, and although they were basically lone spirits, they found great happiness in each other's company. Over the next 3 years, they appeared together in Richard II, The Merchant of Venice, and The School for Scandal. Off stage, they became inseparable. They were married on the 20th of June, 1938.
She was a painter and an artist, and highly artistic in her own right. She came from a family of great distinction and married this very interesting, strange young man who came from a dubious background, but was utterly bewitching.
Shortly after the wedding, Guinness was persuaded by that giant of the theatre, Tyrone Guthrie, to take on the title role in Hamlet at the Old Vic. He found it difficult to reveal enough of his own emotions to bring the prince fully to life on stage. Though the reviews of his performance were mixed, no one doubted Alec's talent, except himself.
He really did have these agonizing moments of self-doubt. Always in the lead up to a production, he'd go through this routine of, oh, I think I should resign. I think I'm completely wrong for the role. I don't think I've really got the point of it. I'm going to wreck the production. Let me out, let me out.
But Guinness was determined not to be defeated by his trepidation. In July 1939, he mounted his own production of Charles Dickens' novel Great Expectations. He wrote the adaptation, but chose not to play the lead. Instead, he selected the small part of the hero's best friend, Herbert Pocket.
Herbert Pocket is traditionally known as a thankless role, but that was the one that he chose to play for himself.
By 1940, Alec Guinness had appeared in over 20 plays on the London stage. Although he didn't have the classic profile of a leading man, and he often questioned his own ability, his work at the Old Vic had given him a considerable reputation. But the war had started, and Alec enlisted in the Royal Navy as an ordinary seaman. As the 26-year-old awaited his first commission, his child Matthew was born on the 6th of June. He only had 6 months to get to know his son before being called into active service. Guinness spent the entire Second World War in action, rising to command a transport ship in the Mediterranean. When he came home in 1945, he found it a struggle to adjust.
He didn't see Marilla for years. And when he came back from the war, it was hard to start to find a place again.
He suddenly had to learn how to be a father to his growing son. With no example from childhood and no role models, it was something of a challenge.
He wasn't particularly nice to Matthew when they were young, yet he was sort of proud of him in a way. I think it must have been very confusing for him that in no way did he want to be like his mother was to him.
As well as getting to grips with domestic life, Alec needed to restart his career. In 1946, the producer Ronald Neame offered him the part of Herbert Pocket again in a prestigious film adaptation of Great Expectations.
Let's drink to London and a very happy future.
The film was directed by David Lean, like Guinness, a dedicated and meticulous craftsman.
David Lean was a perfectionist, and Alec was too. Alec was very precise about, everything. What he wanted, doing everything absolutely, almost perfectly.
Guinness didn't always see eye to eye with his demanding director, but he discovered a natural affinity with the craft of filmmaking.
He appeared to be completely comfortable in the medium. One would have thought that he had made many films. There was never any hesitation, absolute apparent security.
Great Expectations was a massive international triumph. At 33, Alec Guinness had found the perfect outlet for his very particular genius. However, a deeper, more personal journey had yet to begin. In 1948, Alec Guinness had high hopes of repeating the creative success of Great Expectations and take his film work to another level. David Lean's next project was another Dickens adaptation. In Oliver Twist, Guinness saw his opportunity to assume a completely different identity.
He came to me and he said, "Ronnie, I'd like to play Fagin, the old villain." I said, "What? But Alec, you're only 33, 34, whatever. How could you possibly play Fagin?" He said, "Just let me do a test and you'll see." And we set up a day at about 10:30. Onto the set comes not Alec Guinness, but Fagin. And he was perfect.
Why are you awake? Speak out, boy, quick.
I couldn't sleep any longer, sir.
What have you seen?
Nothing, sir.
Oliver Twist was another great success. Alec's electrifying performance as Fagin caught the attention of Michael Balcon, head of Ealing Studios.
The Ealing Studios were a group endeavor. That atmosphere would be ideally suited to Alec at that time because it enables him to be anonymous.
For his first film for Ealing Studios, Guinness took full advantage of his chameleon-like capacity for disguise. In the black comedy Kind Hearts and Coronets, he played not one but 8 different members of an aristocratic family who are all systematically killed off by a distant relative.
But they were all wonderfully delineated and all perfectly done, and they're all so different.
Would you care for a cigar?
I'm sure you're a good fellow. I wouldn't like to ask.
We shall honeymoon on the Riviera and then go on to Italy afterwards.
He had this extraordinary transformational ability. He had a great and very surreptitious ability to reinvent his physicality, to be a different person physically each time he played a different part.
It was the proof that this man could play anything.
Used to get a lot of this stuff in the Crimea. One thing the Ruskies do really well.
The remarkable achievement of playing 8 characters in one film made Kind Hearts and Coronets one of the best-loved films Ealing ever produced. Hollywood began to take notice and tried to lure Alec to America. But he didn't want to go.
He was very British. I don't think the Hollywood scene really appealed to him. The mentality of a lot of Hollywood he would not have enjoyed, I don't think.
Instead, he decided to build a house near Petersfield, 50 miles southwest of London. He and Merula always kept a place in town, but Alec was a very private man, and he liked nothing more than being at home in the quiet of the countryside.
He loved simple things like the first leaves coming out on the trees, the sound of of the birds. And he was very content sitting at home and being at home, playing just a country gentleman.
It was a different life. He wasn't at all an actory man. Not at all. Dogs, he liked.
But Alec's great and growing accomplishment couldn't completely repair the damage suffered in childhood.
He found it very difficult to accept his own abilities and talent, and to enjoy them in a way. And in some respects, you just wanted him to enjoy them.
In his mid-30s and at the top of his form, Guinness delivered highly praised performances in a whole string of bright comedies like Last Holiday and The Man in the White Suit.
In The Man in the White Suit, there's that moment where the suit falls apart and everyone pulls back from him, and you see this genius who's failed and is utterly alone. And in this so-called comedy, here's an element of the most profound tragedy. That's what his gift was, seeing this extraordinary tragic pain that is also hilarious.
For Guinness, the master technician, the laughs came not from spontaneous inspiration, but from meticulous planning.
He was perfect when he came on the set. He knew every line. Not only did he know every line, but if he lifted the glass and took a sip from it, he would do it exactly the same every time, on the same word.
Alec definitely was in love with props, and those comforted him, those triggered him off and helped him to visualize the character that he was playing.
Alec's Ealing comedies were loved all around the world.
These men are ruthless. Fear has no meaning for them as they hurl defiance at the law.
Help! Help!
These men were born to violence.
In 1951, for his part in the Lavender Hill Mob as the mousy accountant turned criminal mastermind, Guinness was nominated for his first Academy Award.
A minute later, the guard will appear around this corner and you, Pendlebury, will detain him for at least half a minute. Ask him for a light, ask him the way, ask him anything, but keep him there. We must have those 30 seconds.
But while his reputation as an actor was growing, Alec Guinness, the man, was undergoing a crisis. In 1952, while shooting the title role in Father Brown, his 11-year-old son Matthew became seriously ill.
Matthew developed polio, which of course scared Marilla and Alec very much.
During that frightening time, Alec often found himself drawn to the local Catholic church where he could sit in quiet reflection. Within 6 months, Matthew had fully recovered, and Alec began to feel that his doubts about his own worth might be eased by an acceptance of faith. Over the next 4 years, he went on retreats to monasteries around England to share the silent and austere lives of the monks. He began to view the Catholic Church as a place of solace and constancy.
I suspect Alec turned to the Catholic Church because it had definite answers. And I think he felt that his life perhaps was muddled.
On the 24th of March 1956, Alec Guinness was baptized into Catholicism in the parish church at Petersfield.
It was something that was very much part of his life, and he went to Mass very often. Marilla also converted to Roman Catholicism, separately. She hadn't discussed it with him.
I think they found a lot of quiet happiness in their faith, but it's essentially the quiet happiness, the reasonable way of life.
Alec was very much easier to talk to. He was much warmer and much more human. When he had embraced spirituality in a very big way, he then became happy as Alec Guinness.
While Alec's spiritual journey was fundamental to him, he didn't abandon his acting career. In fact, he worked all the time, appearing in 8 films between 1952 and 1956, including The Promoter with Glynis Johns and The Lady Killers with Peter Sellers. Though most of Alec's films were commercially successful, they were all quintessentially British, which limited their appeal in America. An exception was The Captain's Paradise of 1953, an hilarious farce starring Guinness as a ship's captain with two wives, Celia Johnson and Yvonne De Carlo.
Alec was a captain aboard a ferry going from Gibraltar to Morocco. Celia Johnson, she was Gibraltar, which was 9 o'clock, Betty bye-byes, here's the hot cocoa.
The man who makes me very happy.
May this go on forever.
And I was his exotic wife. See, he had it both ways.
To my lover.
May this go on forever.
We went into shooting. I did the first scene with him. He put his arms around me. Oh, I'm so glad to have you here.
¿Por qué me regalas cosas tan bonitas?
Because I like giving you things. No present for me.
¿Cómo?
Dije nada para mí.
Yo.
And a very nice present, too.
In the film, Guinness's already famous versatility was sternly tested when he was called on to perform a flamenco number with Yvonne De Carlo, who was an expert dancer. De Carlo taught Guinness to dance, but let him choreograph the comedy.
He did some marvelous things. He thought them up himself.
The combination of Guinness's comic genius and De Carlo's Hollywood glitz made The Captain's Paradise a hit in America and established the actor as one of Britain's most saleable film stars. In due time, Alec Guinness would soar to mesmeric success because of an old friend and a role he didn't even want to play. By 1956, Alec Guinness, at 42, had become a major film star. That year, he was offered the chance to share top-of-the-bill status with William Holden in the Hollywood-financed drama The Bridge on the River Kwai. The film was to be directed by his old friend and sparring partner David Lean. Despite its high profile, Alec didn't consider the part sufficiently challenging, and he turned it down 3 times before agreeing to do it. He played the tight-lipped martinet of an officer, Colonel Nicholson, the leader of a group of British POWs who were forced by their Japanese captors to build a bridge.
Must we build them a better bridge than they could have built for themselves?
Would you prefer to see this battalion disintegrate in idleness? Would you have it said that our chaps can't do a proper job? Don't you realize how important it is to show these people that they can't break us in body or in spirit? Take a good look, Clifton. One day the war will be over, and I hope that the people who use this bridge in years to come will remember how it was built and who built it. Not a gang of slaves, but soldiers, British soldiers, Clifton, even in captivity.
Nicholson becomes obsessed with completing the bridge, unaware that a covert unit of Allied commandos is coming to blow it up.
Officer, sir. British officer. Here to blow up the bridge. Blow up the bridge? Yes, sir. Yes. British commando orders, sir. Blow up the bridge. Yes, sir. Look out. There's no time. No! Help!
On the set, it was David Lean who was obsessed with completing his vision. The two perfectionists inevitably clashed.
David wanted it his way, and Alec wanted it his way. And by the time they got to the end of the picture, one felt that they wouldn't want to work together again.
The two came out of the jungle several months later with a friendship severely strained, but also with a film universally regarded as a masterpiece. The Bridge on the River Kwai won 7 Academy Awards in 1957. Alec Guinness was named Best Actor. The following year, Alec did something completely different. He went to his friend and collaborator of many years, Ronald Neame, with the idea for a film version of The Horse's Mouth, a novel about a gifted but troubled painter.
I said to Alec, I just don't see it as a film, Alec. He said, I promise, Ronnie, it is a film. He said, may I write a screenplay? Because I think I can convince you. And just as when Alec said I could play Fagin in Oliver Twist, so when Alec said I could write a screenplay of The Horse's Mouth, I knew he could.
Guinness went home to Petersfield and sat down to write the screenplay, all in longhand. He met Ronnie Neame several times to try out various scenes. Some months later, The Horse's Mouth went into production, Alec was both writer and star. Though everyone was impressed with his performance, Alec himself was sullen and withdrawn during shooting.
I said, "What's wrong, Alec?" He said, "Well, I'll tell you. Not once since we began shooting has anybody come up to me and said, 'That was good, Alec, well done.'" I said, "Is that what's wrong?" He said, "Yes." But I said, "We think you're marvelous. We think you're wonderful. We're trying to live up to you." "Couldn't somebody have said so?" he said.
For The Horse's Mouth, his first screenplay, Guinness was nominated for another Academy Award. That same year, 1959, the actor who, as a boy, had longed for class and gentility, received a knighthood from the Queen for his achievements on stage and screen. He accepted the honor with typical humility.
He never really talked about it too much. He was not a showy man, you know. He wasn't, look at me and look what I've got. Look at that. No, I have a new Rolls, or I have my Bentley, and I have my this, my... Not. Never, never.
I'm sure he enjoyed becoming Sir Alec. But he would, of course, underplay, you know, "Well, I didn't really deserve it," you know, would be the kind of, the way he would play it, slightly too modest.
In 1960, Guinness worked again with Ronald Neame on Tunes of Glory, which also featured Susanna York.
My first absolutely overwhelming memory of Alec was his gentleness and stoicism. And also, of course, I didn't recognize at the time, great shyness. I never realized how shy he was.
Though The Horse's Mouth and Tunes of Glory were well received, they didn't match the box office bonanza of The Bridge on the River Kwai. Guinness, who was then 46, wondered if his days playing leading roles might be numbered. His fears seemed to be confirmed when David Lean offered him only a character part in his epic Lawrence of Arabia. The film told the story of T.E. Lawrence, the British officer who led a group of Arabs in their revolt against the occupying Turks during the First World War. Lean told Guinness that he was too old to play Lawrence, even though he had already done so on stage. But Lean believed that Alec was his talisman of good fortune and absolutely insisted that he play the Arab leader, Prince Faisal.
They both knew how important they were to each other. And so again and again, Alec would go back when David called him. They sought each other out, even though they disagreed, because the picture was always good.
Lieutenant Lawrence is not your military advisor.
But I would like to hear his opinion.
Damn it, Lawrence, who do you take your orders from?
The English have a great hunger for desolate places. I fear they hunger for Arabia.
Come on, man!
When it was released in 1962, Lawrence of Arabia was immediately acclaimed as a masterpiece of cinematic art. Though Guinness and Lean continued to spar, the actor willingly signed up for the director's next epic, Dr. Zhivago. He took the small but critically important part of Zhivago's enigmatic half-brother, Yevgraf. Over the next decade, Guinness received very few offers of leading roles. Instead, he found himself playing smaller character parts in films starring others. He was a gunrunner in The Comedians. Burton and Taylor starred in that one. He was King Charles I opposite Richard Harris in Cromwell, and a blind butler in the star-packed farce Murder by Death. By the mid-70s, Alec Guinness's film career seemed to be gently winding down. No one at the time could have predicted the surprise blockbuster that would propel him into the stratosphere of success. Through the 60s and the early 70s, Alec Guinness's work on film consisted mostly of small supporting roles. But it was his work in the theatre that gave the actor some of his most arduous challenges and most glorious triumphs. In those years, he starred in works by T.S. Eliot, Arthur Miller, and of course, the Bard. In 1964, in a rare appearance in America, he played to ecstatic audiences in New York in the biographical drama Dylan, based on the life of Dylan Thomas.
I'd never seen anyone act quite like that. He wasn't flamboyant, playing a very flamboyant man, Dylan Thomas, but you couldn't take your eyes off him.
For that performance, he was awarded Broadway's highest honor, the Tony Award, for 1964. 4 years later, Alec reached a personal milestone when he and Merula celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary. Bound by their love and shared faith, they were closer than ever.
It sounds a dreadfully unromantic thing to say, but in the end, I think they suited each other.
Alec's relationship with Merula was one of the wonders of the age. They grew richly together, and they shared a deep spiritual bond.
As they approached their 60s, Alec and Merula cherished the tranquility of their life. She continued to paint, he read voraciously, and they both enjoyed being with Matthew and his daughter Sally, born in 1972. But just as he was settling into comfortable and sedate late middle age, Alec was presented with an intriguing offer. A rising American director, George Lucas, was looking for someone to play a mystical, lightsaber-wielding wizard called Obi-Wan Kenobi in his film Star Wars.
Alec really was my first choice. I needed somebody who would center the film, who would be the rock that the whole film kind of spun around.
Both the expectations and the budget for Lucas's unconventional space fantasy were low, and the director was so keen to have Guinness on board that he offered him 2% of the film's net profits, should there be any.
When he read it, he said he'd always wanted to play a wizard. He saw the fairy tale roots and thought it was a good morality tale.
In the spring of 1976, the 62-year-old veteran arrived on location in Tunisia, where he was joined by Mark Hamill, who played the film's hero, Luke Skywalker.
How did my father die?
A young Jedi named Darth Vader, who was a pupil of mine until he turned to evil, helped the Empire hunt down and destroy the Jedi Knights. He betrayed and murdered your father.
I really felt I was in the presence of, I don't know, someone who I should be on my best behavior. I don't know what. But I do know that the more I did relax and the more I became myself, the more he liked me.
Alec was, concerned that we do a good job and that we make a good movie, and he was on my side. And I was in a situation where some of the crew members weren't really on my side. It was a job, they didn't really care, and it was kind of ridiculous as far as they were concerned. And it was really his professionalism and his importance that sort of said, and he took it seriously, that made a lot of other people on the set take it seriously.
Your power's a weak, old man.
You can't win, Darth. If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
Ben?
But though Guinness stalwartly supported his young director, he wasn't happy when, halfway through the production, Lucas announced that he was rewriting the script and Obi-Wan Kenobi would be killed off.
He was very angry about it, and so we got into those kinds of discussions. And finally, he agreed that it was in the character's best interest.
It would be Obi-Wan Kenobi's disembodied voice that would guide Luke Skywalker through the film's final sequence.
Use the Force, Luke. Let go, Luke.
And this is where a little bit of his personal beliefs began to get in the way. It was very hard to convince him to be a ghost, to be this voice, because he didn't, this was going to sound like the voice of God.
Luke, trust me.
He didn't like it as an actor, but he realized it was in the character's best interest for it to happen that way, and he went along with it.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
When it was released in May 1977, Star Wars became an international sensation. It set a box office record of $273 million in its initial run and sparked off an unprecedented merchandising craze. Suddenly, the famously reticent Alec Guinness found himself on everything from comics and trading cards to action figures. But he also received a 4th Oscar nomination and a huge check thanks to his 2% of the net profits.
He was very, very generous. When you tried to pay for the lunch, oh, no, 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 you know, no, none of that, no, you know, Star Wars and that. He knew he had a certain fame and a role, but he left it there. That was as far as he would go.
Though he made cameo appearances in the next 2 Star Wars films, The Empire Strikes Back and The Return of the Jedi, Alec began to grow weary of the attention.
I think he resented any part that sort of haunted him, that, so to speak, followed him down the street after he'd left it.
A little boy came up and said, with his mother, and said, you know, my son's seen Star Wars 25 times or something. And Alec said, will you promise me one thing? And the boy said, yes. He said, promise me never to see it again.
The world now saw Alec Guinness as Obi-Wan Kenobi, but he wanted to get rid of the lightsaber and do something different. In the late 70s, he accepted an offer from the BBC to play the inscrutable master spy George Smiley in 2 series based on the John le Carré novels Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy and Smiley's People. The master of subtlety again disappeared completely into his new role, but this time the character he played bore more than a passing resemblance to himself.
George Smiley never gave away very much, did he? And yet he knew an awful lot. Alec, he's someone who's very difficult to get to know. And then when he's let someone see him, he gets extremely nervous, pulls down blinds again immediately.
As he approached his 70th birthday, Alec Guinness was still in harness after 5 decades. He decided to collaborate again with the man who had directed his very first feature film, David Lean. They had always had the greatest respect for each other, even though their relationship on set was often combative. In 1984, he accepted a supporting role in Lean's film A Passage to India. Even after nearly 20 years, the tempestuousness of the relationship hadn't moderated.
Passage to India was the most unpleasant experience for Alec. And I think that on that film, it became a real hate situation.
A Passage to India was the least successful of all Lean's collaborations with Guinness. The director died 7 years later, with his next project still in the planning stage, so they never got the chance to be reconciled. In 1985, Alec was finally coaxed into writing his memoirs. Blessings in Disguise became a bestseller and led to 2 more collections of his reminiscences. But typical of their writer, the books weren't at all revelatory.
I think it's one of the most interesting autobiographies because he doesn't speak about himself really at all.
He was a great writer, fantastic writer, and I suppose it's that love of word, the invasion of character, and escape, fantasy. But, I mean, his biographies are just gorgeous, wonderful.
By the late 80s, age was starting to take its toll, and Alec lost confidence in his ability to remember lines. In 1988, he made his final stage appearance, playing a Soviet diplomat in Lee Blessing's political drama A Walk in the Woods, which also starred Edward Herrmann.
To do a 2-hander at that age, at any age, is tough. But at that age, at 79, 80, 81, I think he was, shows a remarkable power and physical and mental agility, which he was pleased to do.
After A Walk in the Woods ended a successful 7-month run, Alec returned to his home in the country. But in 1993, he returned to the screen in the BBC film A Foreign Field, working again with Edward Herrmann. It also boasted the stunning lineup of Lauren Bacall, Leo McKern, and Jean Moreau. As ever, Alec was racked with anxiety.
Then suddenly you get a call, and it will be Alec saying, oh, I don't know about this. I think I'm completely wrong. I think you need a much better actor. I think, I just don't think I can do this.
But once the cameras started rolling, Alec was as comfortable as ever.
To see him on set was like watching a child in the nursery. In that messy, tangled, cable-ridden, uncomfortable, delay-ridden process, which we call filmmaking, he was wholly at home.
In the film, Guinness plays a mentally damaged ex-soldier returning to Normandy many years after the D-Day landings.
It's only a restaurant, Amos. Don't worry about it.
like the chippy back home. You want to weigh medal? Where is it? All right. There you go. Come on.
A Foreign Field proved to be Alec's last major role. A few years later, he and Merula were separately diagnosed as suffering from cancer. They spent their time quietly at home in Petersfield, preparing for the life to come in the comfort of a shared faith.
Their failing health helped him to concentrate on what he felt was important. He was not afraid of the eternal.
Sir Alec Guinness died on the 5th of August 2000 at the age of 86. 2 months later, Merula passed away.
He and Merula were like Romeo and Juliet saying goodbye to each other at the bedside. They were both smiling and just held hands, and they both said to each other, "See you soon." Their belief was absolute.
It was an incredibly simple service. The priest lost his place in the prayer book and dropped it and picked it up, and everybody laughed and felt, well, that's the kind of part that Alec would have played.
The man Peter Ustinov called the outstanding poet of anonymity was mourned around the world as one of the greatest ever actors.
He never could become fashionable or unfashionable. Put him in any century, put him in any country, put him in any culture. He was a great actor.
He was able to transform his own sufferings into something that was wonderfully healing to watch. Through his characters, he shares this sadness in him. It's just a gift.
To his legions of friends, Alec Guinness will be remembered for his loyalty, gentility, and kindness.
I think he overcame, with grace, a lot of demons. I think he'd been handed a pretty rum card by life when he started out, and I admire the fact that he didn't let that hurt anyone else.
He imparted the importance of loyalty, and I never forgot that. I miss him. It's not even real to me, that he's gone.
The Force will be with you, always.
He was not on Earth to impress people. He was on Earth to be a great friend, to do his work exceedingly brilliantly. He was put on Earth to show everyone how it ought to be done.
Can you browse the web on that thing? Because he looks pretty advanced.
We're leaving.
Can I put a DVD in him?